Hello, welcome. I'm Ann Bowen. I'm the Executive Director for South Dakota Humanities Council. Today, we'd like to share information with you about a favorite South Dakota Humanities Council program, the One Book. This is the 21st year for One Book South Dakota, and it is the 10th year for Young Readers One Book South Dakota. One Book South Dakota is a way to spark meaningful discussions across the state. Authors have included Pulitzer Prize and National Book Award winners, homegrown talent, novelists, tribal writers, and historians. The Young Readers One Book South Dakota allows third grade children throughout the state to receive their very own copy of a special book, and it brings in the book's author who talks with them about what it's like to write a book and celebrates their reading. In 2022, we read Nick Estes's Our History is the Future and Anne Griffin's Smashing McPurder and the Mystery of Room 11, two wonderful books and deeply talented authors that led conversations throughout the state. Let's reveal the two new books and hear from their authors. Jennifer Widman, the South Dakota Center for the Book Director, will share more about the 2023 books.
Well, thank you, Anne. And hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Anne said, I'm Jennifer Widman. I'm the director of the South Dakota Center for the Book. And I'm just so excited to share today's big announcement with you. We have two incredible selections for you this year. One's for adults, one is for youth. And their two amazing writers are joining us today. And I'm not going to make you wait any longer to find out who they are. So I will start with our One Book South Dakota selection for 2023. And it is a title that some of you may have heard at this last couple of years' festivals. That is The Seed Keeper by Diane Wilson. And Diane Wilson is joining us today. This is a haunting novel that spans several generations following a Dakota family's struggles to preserve their way of life and their sacrifices to protect what matters most. Its main character, Rosalie Ironwing, draws strength from the knowledge that she's descended from women with souls of iron, women who have protected their families, their traditions, and a precious cache of seeds through generations of hardship and loss. Now, let me tell you a little bit about Diane Wilson. In addition to the multiple award-winning The Seed Keeper, it really has gotten just a ton of awards. Diane is the author of the memoir Spirit Car, Journey to a Dakota Past, and a nonfiction book, Beloved Child, A Dakota Way of Life. She's the executive director for the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance, a national coalition of tribes and organizations working to create sovereign food systems for Native people. Diane is also a member of the Oceti-Sakowin Writers Society, formerly the Oak Lake Writers Society, which endeavors to develop, strengthen, and preserve culture-based writing by Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota people. She is a Mdewakanton Dakota descendant, enrolled on the Rosebud Reservation right here in South Dakota, and lives in Schaefer, Minnesota. So welcome, Diane Wilson.
Oh, thank you. I am just thrilled to be here today.
Well, we are thrilled to have you. As I mentioned, you were at the festival this fall in Brookings, but we're really going to ramp up the activity and discussions this year with The Seed Keeper as our one book. So just as an introductory kind of moment, tell me a little bit about where the book came from. Who and what were your inspirations or your influences that led you to write this novel?
Well, there were a lot of them. So the past 20 years, I have worked for Native organizations, including the Dream of Wild Health in Minnesota, and then also the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance. And I had the honor of working with our indigenous seeds and foods for all those years, and also working with elders who shared their teachings and their stories, and farmers. And most of all, I learned from the seeds themselves by growing them and sharing them back with community. And so when I was thinking about writing this story, it was really a way to give back all that I have been given over the past 20 years, and making sure that these teachings continue on to our broader community, but also for future generations. And at the heart of The Seed Keeper is a true story about Dakota women who, back during the 1862 Dakota War in Minnesota, when they were being removed from the state and they didn't know where they were going to go or how they would feed their families, they sewed their seeds into the hems of their skirts and hid them in their pockets. And so that was the story that was right at the heart of the book. And then I wanted to show how that is our responsibility for the gift of these seeds, and then to look at how that relationship has changed over many years, and what that change means not only for us as human beings, but also for the seeds themselves. So, it's very much my love story for the seeds themselves. They're so magical and so beautiful. And it was just a joy to write this book.
That's wonderful. I love thinking about it as a love story to the seeds. That is great. So as you said, there's a really strong focus here on Dakota culture surrounding seeds, plants, foods, which is very dear to your heart that you've talked about. But one of the reasons we chose it, obviously, is we'd love to build on that and discuss that. But it's also so rich, this book, I think, with other topics for discussion as well. Just thinking of some of them, it touches on issues of foster care, of boarding schools, interracial marriage, friendship between women, intergenerational trauma, all of those sorts of things. And it really also brings in some strong ideas about current environmental degradation, corporate agriculture, some of the challenges that are facing all of us in this Upper Great Plains region, as people are trying to both make a living and care for the land. Especially in that modern sort of caring for the climate, caring for the environment. What kinds of messages are you hoping that people will take away, or at least just what kind of thoughts are you hoping they'll consider?
Well, one of the things that I learned over my years of working with indigenous seeds, and then and also writing books about how assimilation works and about historical trauma, and the process of trying to transform historical trauma, and realizing that all of these issues are interconnected, that you can't separate out what has happened through our history from what has happened to our foods. And so the book is a way of providing context around the ways that our foods are deeply interrelated with what happened in boarding schools, what's happened with land allotment. And that because these traditional systems, which relied on taking care of land and water and animals and seeds in a way that ensured that we all survived, that we were all taking care of each other as relatives, which is that Mitakuye-Owasso, it's that central belief in Dakota and Lakota culture that we are all related. And when you move away from that and you move to a different system of agriculture, for example, where you have a relationship that's built on understanding plants and animals and seeds as commodities, then that opens a door to making decisions that are based on profit. And so really that's one of the questions I really try to grapple with, is that juxtaposing those two worldviews and the impacts that that's had on our overall environment. And then how do we, to me, it's fundamental that if we want to make changes to what's happening around our climate crisis, that we look first at our relationship with plants and animals and the water, and that's what needs to change first of all. So my hope is that, because often when I'm out talking to people about the book, I've noticed a lot of almost paralysis, people feeling despair around so much because we've lost so much already. And so what I really hope people will remember is that even small actions make a difference, and that even as we continue to lose these plant and animal relatives, there are so many left here and it's our responsibility to take care of them. And so we continue to do the work no matter what. And so the book is intended to be, I don't know if hopeful is overstating when we're facing such so many environmental issues, but it is intended to help people understand our responsibility to continue to act despite what we hear in the news, and that by doing that, we re-engage with our great love for the world, for plants and animals and seeds, and we don't let go of that part because we're facing so many challenges.
I love that as well, that idea of, because I do think there's a hopefulness in it. There's a positivity for moving forward. And that, I mean, what a great message to take out there. And I hope that you'll be sharing that with South Dakotans all over the state. I was going to ask you what you hope readers will gain from reading and discussing this book, and you, I think, have really answered that very, very nicely. Anything in particular you hope to do yourself during this year of being the one book author?
Well, I do want to say that it is so special to me to be honored by this selection, because my family, my mother's family, was from South Dakota, and my mother and my aunts grew up in boarding school, but so much of my writing and research has been centered in South Dakota. So to be able to come back and have these conversations and be in a land where I feel such a strong family rootedness out here, and to share these stories, this is a great honor for me. So I just want to thank you, and to say that I'm excited for these conversations. So put the coffee on. I'm happy to come visit.
Well, we're thrilled to have you representing and inspiring South Dakotans throughout this whole year. We're looking forward to spending more time with you and your work, and people can continue to watch the Facebook and other social media and the SDHC website to find out where you'll be and when and what opportunities they have to talk about you and your work. And I want to mention something I mentioned when we were chatting before this started, is that we just got a notice this morning that our shipment of several hundred copies of The Seed Keeper has just left the warehouse. So hopefully next week we'll have books ready for groups to start discussing. So exciting things happening. We're so glad to have you with us, Diane. Thank you.
Thank you.
And now for the youth in our state, especially for the 12,000 or so third graders who will receive their own copies next fall, here is our 2023 Young Readers One Book. It is I'm sorry, I'm gonna hold up the wrong book again. It is The Tale of Despereaux by Kate DiCamillo.
Hi.
Wonderful book. Yes. Hi, Kate. So the hero of this Newbery Medal winning book is Despereaux Tilling, a mouse who is in love with music, stories, and a princess named P. It is also the story of a rat called Roscuro, a serving girl named Miggery Sow, and the adventures that bring them together. It just so happens that 2023 marks the 20th anniversary of the release of The Tale of Despereaux. So we congratulate Kate on that. And here in South Dakota, it's the 10th annual Young Readers Festival, and Kate DiCamillo was the author of our first ever Young Readers One book, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane. And she came to South Dakota in 2014 and visited with lots of young readers on the eastern side of the state. So it seems only fitting to be bringing her back this time to meet readers on the western side of the state.
Yeah, I'm so excited about all those anniversaries, but I'm more than anything, I'm excited to get to meet those kids. Because it was such a profound experience last time.
Yes. Well, I can tell you that it was a profound and inspiring experience for many of those kids as well. Some of them writing then illustrating their own books the very next day. So always very exciting. I'm going to tell everybody just a few short things about you, although I'm sure many of them are very familiar with you already. But you were born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, raised in Claremont, Florida, and now you live in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Kate writes books for both children and adults, including Because of Winn-Dixie, a Newbery Honor winner, Flora and Ulysses, a Newbery Medal winner, The Tiger Rising and Raimi Nightingale, both National Book Award finalists, and as I mentioned earlier, The Miraculous Journey of Edward Tulane and The Tale of Despereaux. She also writes the Mercy Watson and Tales from Decaloo Drive series, and she co-writes the Bengali series with Allison McGee, and many of you will recognize some of those titles have been included in our one books as well, with either the author, the co-author, the illustrator representing the book here. Kate also served as the National Ambassador for Young People's Literature for 2014 to 2015, and she thinks of herself as an enormously lucky person because she gets to tell stories for a living. So welcome again, Kate. And yeah, would you tell us a little bit about what your experiences were like in South Dakota in 2014?
You know, it was, and it's actually my experience there has ended up in a lot of speeches that I've given other places, because it was this, do you remember that theater, Jennifer?
Yes.
You put 900 kids. It's 900 kids that you bust in from all over. And so you would think that was a recipe for like chaos. And what it was this huge, like we just connected powerfully. They were the most present and engaged kids, and we just formed a connection. And that happened twice, because we did 2 shows in that theater. 1,800 kids, is that right? Am I remembering that right?
That is correct. All those Sioux Falls third graders, and we brought them in 2 shifts.
Yeah, and it was it's something that I still talk about, because it was just, a lot of times it was just electric, because the kids were so present, and because they gave me their hearts and I gave them my heart in return. And I just felt really lucky to be there.
That is wonderful to hear. So let's talk about the Tale of Despereaux a little bit. Tell us a little about where the book came from, where the idea came from, what inspired you.
Despereaux was, so the very first book that I wrote was because of Winn-Dixie. And I was working at a book warehouse here in Minneapolis when I sold that book. So that helped me have a very realistic expectation of what was going to happen with a first novel for kids. And I thought that if I was really lucky, something like 5,000 copies would sell. And something else happened, which it was a book that people responded to, and it was a wonderful and terrifying thing for me as a writer, because everybody kept on saying they wanted another book like that one, and I wanted everybody to respond that way again. All of that is to say that Tale of Despereaux is partly a product of me realizing that I was going to have to write something totally different than Winn-Dixie if I wanted to survive as a writer. I had to figure out a way to write a story for the story's sake, and not, to make people like me. And so pretty soon after Winn-Dixie had been published, I was visiting my best friend, and her son was 8 years old, and he had never been very impressed with me before, but all of a sudden I had my name on the spine of a book, and he was a big reader. And so he followed me everywhere that visit, and right before I left, he asked if he could have a private word with me. So I went into his room and sat down. I'm like, "What's up?" And he said, "I've got an idea for a book. It's the story of an unlikely hero with exceptionally large ears." And I said, "Oh, that sounds great. What happens to the hero?" And he gave me this disgusted look and said, "That's why I want you to write the book, so that we can find out." And so that's where I started. I loved the phrase "unlikely hero," and then he didn't say a mouse, but a mouse seemed like the most unlikely hero of all. So that's where the idea started.
It's a wonderful story. I mean, I know we all know how children's books influence their readers, but in your case, it definitely sounds like your readers and potential readers influence you all the time.
Yeah, and also inspire me, just because, there's something really powerful about writing books for kids, because I think of it as peripheral magic, where all those things that you stop believing in as an adult are still possible when you're a kid. Something miraculous is happening just out of the corner of your eye. And I love tapping into that. And I love watching kids in the world and how they're still engaged with that. And excuse me for just a minute while I say something to the dog. Come here. Sorry. Okay, I'm back. She was,
It's always good to have Ramona in the background, right? So let me ask you, one of the things that we've been talking and thinking about here, Despereaux is very much, I think of him as a dreamer. He wants to live in this world full of light and love and warmth and soup. But throughout the book, he gets into some situations and meets some characters that could be a little bit sad or a little bit scary for some of the readers. And this is something I know I've heard you speak about before. Could you tell a little bit about why your books so often mix a little bit of the dark in with the light?
yeah, I mean, it's not something I do consciously, but to me, it's just it's disrespectful to a young reader to present the world as something it's not. The world is beautiful and it's terrifying. It's filled with joy and it is filled with sadness. And this is true for all of us. And so to have books that pretend that terrible things don't happen seems like it does a real disservice to the reader. And I, as a kid, would always get so frustrated when I was being condescended to. And so maybe it comes from that I that 8-year-old that is still very firmly, I remember watching, speaking of Ramona, Beverly Cleary in an older interview when she talked about the 3rd grader and her was just right here. And that's the way it is for me too. And I just remember so clearly what it was like to be a kid and have an adult tell me that something that I could see it right in front of me wasn't actually happening, so we have to talk about those things, and we also have to, as Catherine Patterson says, it's I am duty bound, honor bound to end with hope, and I do, and I need that hope as much as the reader does.
Yes, that's wonderful. And I think, we all need that in our books, but especially those who are still growing and changing. Well, perhaps we all are still growing and changing, right?
Yes, hopefully we are, right?
Yes. Yeah. So is there any particular hope that you have that South Dakota's young readers, especially the 3rd graders who will receive their own copies, but anybody who engages with the book this year, that they will take away any messages or any experiences or any thoughts that you hope that they will come to?
I was thinking when Diane was talking about how books are like seeds. And so to think about these kids walking away, holding a book in their hands, and it will grow inside of them in ways that I can't anticipate or hope for, but I believe it will happen. And so it's like we are getting to be a part of this program. Getting those books into those hands and those minds is like, like casting seeds out into the world. And that really moves me to think about that.
I love that. And I think you might have just given us an idea for the theme of the whole year in terms of books being seeds. So what
good.
a wonderful way.
I've always wanted to come up with that kind of stuff. Good.
There you are. It's a perfect combination. Well, we're really excited to have you back this year, Kate. I know that there are going to be so many young readers that are excited to meet you. We can't wait to talk with you. You'll be in both Rapid City and Deadwood, but meeting kids from a greater area than that at the festival. So we're really looking forward to having you back.
Oh, and I'm looking forward to it too. Thank you so much.
Well, this is going to end our program for today. We cannot wait, as I said, to host Diane Wilson and Kate DiCamillo at the 2023 South Dakota Festival of Books in Deadwood. That's September 22nd through the 24th. And Kate will also appear in Rapid City on September 21st. In addition, Diane will make a special author tour this summer with lots of details still to be determined, and we will be announcing those later. You can find information on our website about applying to hold a 2023 One Book South Dakota discussion. As a reminder, you can borrow books from our lending library, and if you wish, you can host an SDHA scholar to lead your discussion. And again, all of that information is on sdhumanities.org. So I want to thank you all for taking time out of your day to join us for this announcement. Special thanks to Diane Wilson and Kate DiCamillo for being with us today. And all of us at SDHC, and I hope all of you out there are looking forward to the great conversations and fun activities these books are going to spark. So thank you so much, and goodbye.